Professor Nikos Papasteriadis is the Director of the Research Unit in Public Cultures at the University of Melbourne. Nikos, great to have you with us tonight.
Pleasure to be here, Beverly.
Just a few days now, we're seeing these new polls saying perhaps the yes vote has a slim majority. Do you think that is the way it is moving?
It's too tight to call, to be honest. I think if we thought about the situation purely in logical terms, the no vote would be streets ahead. I would expect between 60 to 80% of the people would be in their self-interest to vote no. But with the fear campaign, as you say, has been launched by every political leader in Europe, there has been a sort of emotional and threatening and blackmailing that's gone on that's really put the situation at a knife's edge. But it's still very hard to call and hard to really predict, because the news polls that have often come from the newspapers themselves, which are largely controlled by the oligarchs. The oligarchs themselves have openly despised and have done everything they can to sabotage Syriza. So again, the objectivity of these polls leaves a bit of area for doubt, I think.
Nikos, you are very close to Yanis Varoufakis, the finance minister. How much have they been able to do in the short time that they have been in government?
Well, they've had an astronomical problem to deal with. The biggest clean-up merchant jobs that ever has been given to any party, because there's been decades of corruption, decades of mismanagement, and decades of failing to deal with entrenched problems. The entry into the European Union caused a contraction of the economic base, first of all.
And this is what he takes issue with so
That's
much,
right.
Doesn't he? Yes.
Yes, because basically the manufacturing plants and the manufacturing sector had to close down because it was no longer viable, tariffs were removed, and Greece became an importer from places like Germany of all its goods. And all it provided in return was services like holidays and agriculture and shipping. Now, that, in a sense, put the economy in a very precarious position, in a very narrow base, and now it's the job of how to reboot and modernise and restructure that economy to define new opportunities for it to grow. And the other biggest problem that they face is the entrenched problems of a corrupt political structures in order to eliminate cronyism and clientelism. They need to sort of tackle the bureaucracy, which has never been properly addressed, in waste and duplication and the Byzantine structures that operate there. So they need to rationalise and modernise that bureaucracy. And most importantly, to tackle tax evasion in a country which has seen increasing and unacceptable levels of polarisation.
So that all remains endemic in the country, which is a massive problem. Let's talk for a moment about, say the no vote does get up and there is an exit from the Eurozone. What would that mean for everyday Greeks?
Well, first of all, the no vote doesn't automatically mean an exit, and Varoufakis and Tsipras have both been categorical in stating that they are not asking a no vote in order to get a licence to work their way out of Europe. I think the no vote has been put forward as a reflection directly on the austerity measures. The austerity measures, which in themselves have been proved to be counterproductive and destructive to the economy.
Just not rebooting the economy.
Failing to reboot the economy for the reasons I just mentioned, and also causing profound and distressful humanitarian damage to the society. However, if the no-vote does go through, it would strengthen, I would argue, enormously the political legitimacy of this party, because after all, it only has 36% of the vote. It came as a coalition, not as an independent standing party on its own. It would put them in a much stronger bargaining position in Europe, and would certainly make them negotiate a much better outcome for Greece. So my strong belief is that they are not seeking an exit out of the Eurozone, let alone the European Union.
But should there be an exit out of the Eurozone, what might that mean for an economy that's in dire straits already?
It would be catastrophic. Greece is a country that is totally dependent for its pharmaceuticals from abroad, and it largely has to import almost all its fuel. It's a country which, although it has this beautiful reputation of golden summers, which has also bitter winters, and 2/3 of the country experiences sub-zero temperatures in the winter at night. Now, if you have this snap cold, if you have this dependency on pharmaceuticals which suddenly become unaffordable, people can die from the simplest things like a cold.
But and that is what we're not really hearing, the human tragedy of this unfolding. We're just hearing the finances of it all the time. If the yes vote gets through because of this fear factor, then there is no mandate to continue this reform.
I'd like to take that point as well. I agree with you that there is a moral void going on here. A lot of the politicians outside of Europe have talked about the fact that now we have set up tools in place. We have structures and buffers in place so that there's no economic contagion. Their number one anxiety is that Finland or Austria or Italy won't be exposed financially to the so-called catastrophe of Greece. But imagine this. Europe is a union. Australia is a union. If Tasmania was going to suddenly be exposed to a catastrophe of this order, where thousands of people will be exposed to deaths, which they normally would be, would the rest of Australia sit back and say, well, that doesn't affect us? We have no sense of contagion to that. We have no sense of moral responsibility to our neighbours, let alone to people who are members into our own union. So I think at this point in time, Europe really needs to show some unity in the union.
It is also losing a lot of people. There's been an enormous brain drain. People, desperate Greeks just leaving the country. So how does it rebuild and how does it find those other avenues of revenue?
That's true. Greece, has this reputation of having had it too easy the last 2 decades, and that, there are certain reputations that there were more Porsches in the small town of Kalamata than there are in Manhattan on a per capita basis. But the other reality is also Greece has one of the highest MAs, masters per capita, because Greeks, as in here in Australia, Greeks put a very high priority on education. So they were sending their kids for their education abroad. And now Germany is full of doctors of Greek background. The United Kingdom is full of academics of Greek background. There is a massive brain drain that has occurred, and that too has undermined and weakened the capacity and resilience of the society to reboot itself.
If you're a betting man, who would you be putting money on Sunday?
I don't bet, unfortunately.
Come
Not
on,
even
pretend
for sport.
just for this one, okay.
But I will put my money where my heart is, and that is the word no.
Okay, Nikos, really great to have you with us. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.